Hello there, dear friends, and welcome once again to the Relaxed Fantasy Review. Today, we're going to be talking about spell casting. As we continue our series on high-level casting, we're going to be talking about bard spells, 7th level bardic magic. It is at character level 13 that bards finally get their 7th level spells, and we're still in that realm of spells you can only cast once per long rest until the end of the game, basically. And these spells are absolutely earth-shatteringly powerful. They are... The choices are getting shorter and shorter on these lists as there are fewer and fewer high-level magics out there. But I still have a top 5 for you. Top 5 spells I recommend all bards consider when they reach level 13 and get to pick their spells. Starting with number 5 on the list, we have Mordekainen's Magnificent Mansion. Or Magnificent Mansion, if you'd rather. This is a fan favorite in D&D because of its flavor. You cast the spell, takes a minute, and a door appears. You enter the door, and inside is a giant mansion. It's got enough space in there with several bedrooms. You decide the layout, the design. There is a full staff of ethereal servants inside, which can basically follow your orders, although they can't harm anyone. They can take care of your belongings, feed you, bring you drinks, what have you. The mansion is a place of respite, and you can take a long rest in there, you can sleep, it doesn't require concentration to keep this up, and it lasts for 24 hours. And you designate who can see and enter the door and who can't, so basically you just pick a spot and your party enters the door, and now they're safe for 24 hours, regardless of where they are. I've had high-level campaigns literally take long rests in the middle of dangerous dungeons because they just cast Magnificent Mansion and they just go hide somewhere. It's like it's like better than Rope Trick. It's better than Lehman's Tiny Hut. It's better than all of this because it just is a gorgeous and stunning place to stay. It doesn't have any real effectiveness outside of that, but I mean, what else do you want from a 7th level spell? If you haven't spent your slot yet, why not throw a mansion up there for you guys to just have a wonderful place to rest? Now, number 4 on the list is a utility spell, and it's Teleport. Teleport is one of the most complicated spells in all of D&D, so I'll be brief. You cast Teleport, and every creature within 10 feet of you that you designate will get teleported away. How likely it is that you'll end up where you want depends on several factors. The main factor is how familiar you are with this location. There's 2 ways to make the teleportation certain. One is if there's a teleportation circle there that you're familiar with the runes, you can just pop straight to it, no problem. The other way is if you have an object, an associated object from that location, something that came from that place in the world, then you can teleport straight to the location it came from. Again, no problem. It's when you don't have either of those it gets hard. If you are extremely familiar with the place, you've been there several times, you've studied it, you can teleport there with a 75% chance of success. If you have been there more than once, you've seen it casually, but you haven't really studied it, that lowers your chance of success down to like 55%. And then if you start getting further and further away from that, such as if you have seen it through once from a distance, perhaps through magic, or if a person has described it to you, or you've seen a painting or a drawing of it, that then starts to lean a little more towards the other side of teleport. There's 4 ways that a teleportation spell can end. It can send you right where you want to go. No problems, you end up there, and that's the end of it. Or you can end up with a misfire. And the idea with a misfire is that you end up close-ish to the destination, but that actually depends on how far you're going. See, to teleport to a location, you have to know how many miles it is to that location. If you are off target, you roll 2d10s, multiply the numbers together, and that's how many miles off your target you are. So if you teleported 100 miles, for example, you'd roll 2d10s. Let's say you rolled a 5 and a 3. Multiply those together, that's 15%. 15% of 100 miles is 15 miles. So you would end up 15 miles away from your destination, a distance randomly determined by the DM. This makes teleporting to a coastal region dangerous because half the time, if you misfire, you're going to end up in the ocean, miles and miles out in the ocean. The another thing that can happen is you can end up in a similar location. If you wanted to teleport to a castle, but you fail the teleport to this point, you might end up in a different castle somewhere else. In theory, the similar location would just send you to the closest one that is similar to what you were trying to get to, whether it was a tavern, a castle, a dungeon, a city, whatever. I want to go to this city, and you get similar location, well, then you're going to end up in a different city. It could be the next city over, but because the spell teleport doesn't have any limitation on distance, it could honestly be anywhere. You could end up in any city, or any castle, or any dungeon. So lots of shenanigans with teleport. And then, of course, the worst case scenario is a mishap, which basically means you don't go anywhere. You take 3d10 force damage, you and everyone who's being teleported, and then you re-roll. Once you've committed to teleporting, you can't cancel the teleport. It's going to happen one way or another. And if you roll mishaps over and over again, you'll keep taking the damage. Teleport can absolutely kill a party. It can destroy an entire party, and it's dangerous. But because it can take you anywhere, even places you've never been before, it absolutely is one of the most powerful spells. And I had a player once who used teleport often. By every time she'd go somewhere, she would just start collecting pebbles and like putting them in special pockets so she knew where they came from. And then every time she wanted to teleport somewhere she'd already been, she would just grab the pebble, 100% chance, pop, there she goes, no problem. Great use of the spell, and yeah, it's too powerful. It's dangerous, but it's too powerful not to get a spot on this list. Now, for number 3, we have another utility spell, Resurrection. Resurrection is a spell that allows you to touch a creature that has been dead for no less than a century, or sorry, no more than a century, so 100 years, and bring them back to life. You don't have to have the whole body, you just have to have a piece of it. It restores all missing body parts and cures diseases that aren't magical in nature. They get a -4 penalty to their abilities until they've taken a few long rests. And the person who casts Resurrection, if they bring someone who's been dead for more than a year, the spell takes a toll on the caster, so they cannot cast more spells, and all their d20 rolls, tax ability checks, and saving throws have disadvantage until the next long rest they take. So it's quite an ordeal. Also, it costs 1,000 gold pieces to cast. So it's expensive, taxing, but it can bring any creature back from the dead that's been dead for 100 years or less. That's a long time. You could bring back a companion that was from a previous campaign. You could bring back a lost relative that died in battle. You could bring back a dead king that died in a war. Like, there's so many things you could do with this spell. It's kind of broken when you really think about the time scale of campaigns. And that's why it deserves a spot on the list, not just for its utility. Like, if Revivify didn't work and Raise Dead wasn't available, well, here you go, Resurrection. Fantastic. But we've still got 2 more to go. Number 2 on this list, Etherealness. Etherealness is Ghost Walk, but it takes it to a whole nother level. You cast a spell, and for 8 hours, or until you choose to end the spell, you enter the border ethereal. That means that you're technically in the ethereal plane, and can pass through solid objects, can't be targeted by spells or attacks, can't be seen by anyone who can't see into the ethereal plane anyway. But you step into that border between the two. You can move through walls. You can fly straight up if you want. You can walk in any direction. Solid objects do not impede you, but you can still see the real world. The Border Ethereal is a wonderful place to scout, to spy. Again, referring to teleport, I've had a player use Etherealness, walk into an enemy dungeon, study it carefully while in the ethereal plane, leave, then cast teleport on a bunch of people and bring them in all together right to the end of the dungeon. Great use of those two spells together. But Etherealness is just a wonderful scouting tool. It's an escape tool. You only can use it on yourself, but if you upcast it, you can target more than one creature. I think at the 8th level, you can target 4, including yourself. Yeah, it just breaks so much of exploration, puzzles, traps, escaping situations. It's a wonderful, wonderful spell that has done lots of service to players in my games, and I cannot talk highly enough about Etherealness. It truly is one of the greatest 7th level spells. But in my mind, it's beaten by 1. The number 1 spell on this list, Force Cage. The only one that even could be remotely used in combat that I've discussed so far. I guess you could, in theory, use Etherealness, but Force Cage is a combat spell, and a wonderful one at that. You create a 10 by 10 or 15 by 15 cage. If it's a smaller one, it's a solid box that has no sight in or out. And if it's the cage, then it has half-inch holes. Well, it's bars, rather, but they're half-inch apart in it. So technically you can see in and out of it, but no creature can pass through it. Even if they have like an amorphous form, they can't. The only way to get out of it is to attempt to teleport. But even trying to teleport out of a force cage, you have to make a charisma save against the caster's spell save DC. And if you fail it, your spell slot is wasted. So you can't Misty Step or Dimension Door out of these things without a good charisma saving throw. Now, the other thing about Force Cage is that it doesn't take concentration. It lasts for an hour concentration free, so you can just pop this thing around a group of enemies and they will not bother you for an hour. It's even better when you combine it with something like Sickening Radiance or Cloud Kill, a nice AoE that just kind of sits there and cooks the enemies. A Force Cage mixed with Sickening Radiance is basically a surefire death trap for any creature that can't teleport outside. And because you're not concentrating on it, if you use this and then you get attacked after the fact, the Force Cage isn't going away because you can't have your concentration broken on something you're not concentrating on. And it's unbreakable, cannot be dispelled. Even the Disintegrate Wall of Force trick doesn't work on this. It is truly unbreakable for the hour. Even the caster arguably couldn't break it. It is what Wall of Force... It's Wall of Force's bigger brother, basically. And it is amazingly powerful. And one of the greatest battlefield control spells out there, and I give it high praise and recommend any bard take it. Honestly, if any bard took any of the 5 spells in this list, they would not be messing up. These are all wonderful spells with many varied uses, and all of them are game-changing spells which will really shift the dynamic of magic in your game. So, bards, pay attention. These are your top choices. This has been the Relaxed Fantasy Review. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe down below, and keep your eyes peeled for more spellcasting reviews coming down the line soon. Have a good one, my friends.